Hi everyone, we're just going to wait a few minutes to let everyone in and then we'll get started. Okay, um, so let's get started. We'd like to thank you for joining the National Zoning Atlas for our Metro Area Snapshot series, where we highlight metro areas as they become accessible on our national map. Today, we'll be discussing Phoenix, Arizona, but first, we'd like to thank Arnold Ventures for their generous support and the University of Arizona for helping get the Arizona Atlas off the ground. My name is Ashley Graham Clark, and with me today is zoning analyst Jeff Conkle and geospatial analyst Dejan Williams. Jeff, Dejan, and myself all contributed to publishing the Arizona Atlas. So today we'll start by answering the question, why build the National Zoning Atlas? We'll then move on to sharing how we build the Atlas, how to use the Atlas, and finally dive into exploring our findings from our analysis of the Phoenix metro area. Please feel free to share any questions in the Q&A box as they come to mind so that we can discuss them towards the end. So you might be wondering, what is the NZA? The National Zoning Atlas is a collaborative research project working to digitize, demystify, and democratize US zoning codes. Our product is a first of its kind database and interactive map that displays the regulations governing what and where people can build across the country. So, as we know, zoning impacts various aspects of society, from our built and natural environments to our health and, of course, housing. With this in mind, our goal is to make zoning more understandable for everyone. We can all agree that zoning is oftentimes way too complicated. The National Zoning Enabling Act of 1922 was the model legislation for states to authorize local governments to zone. And as a result, around 30,000 jurisdictions across the nation exercise their right to zone today. This makes it hard to understand at scale. Zoning language and accessibility vary, which can also complicate things quite a bit. So locating codes online and in person can be challenging, and this is especially true in smaller rural towns with limited planning staff. If and when you do manage to find a code, it's oftentimes, the text is often too long and filled with legal jargon that's very hard to understand. So the NZA responds to these challenges in three ways. First, by creating a one-stop shop for zoning codes, where we collate thousands of unique codes and store them all in a single database. Second, we standardize key code data points that enable an apples to apples comparison across jurisdictions. Lastly, the NZA makes the codes accessible to non-experts. Our easy to use online map helps encourage public access and can be used as a tool for public education. So our famous use case comes out of Montana, where the Frontier Institute used their Montana Atlas to convince lawmakers that a spike in home values was in part due to overly restrictive zoning. So Frontier succeeded in their campaign, and the picture on the left shows the governor speaking after the adoption of zoning reforms that included easing restrictions on ADUs, duplexes, and triplexes. Another partner, Housing Works Rhode Island, publishes an annual housing fact book. After releasing the Rhode Island Atlas in the fall, they incorporated zoning data into their analysis and enhanced the quality of their regional investigations. And finally, Atlas data is being used in scholarly research. So, an example of this includes a collaboration with Cornell Tech to investigate methods to accelerate zoning data collection and standardization using natural language processing. These are just a few examples of our partners using the Atlas to help influence policy, inform analysis, and conduct research. So, how is the map built? The data plugged into the Atlas has to be accurate, and this is to ensure it is usable by policymakers and easy for non-experts to understand. So we do this by following the methodology featured in the How to Make a Zoning Atlas guide, and in short, we call it the How-To Guide. This document contains instructions for both zoning analysts who work with code text and geospatial analysts who work with GIS data. The NZA leadership team regularly evaluate and update the methodology to adopt best practices. So on the screen is a view of the NZA editor. In every jurisdiction with zoning, analysts work together to establish the list of zoning districts featured in both the zoning code and the map. Here you can see the zoning districts listed for Ithaca, New York. And at this stage, we identify what type of district it is, whether it be residential, mixed with residential or non-residential. We also identify if it's an overlay. Analysts then review over 100 different data points within each district, beginning with treatment type. So the types are one family, two family, three family, or four or more family housing units. Here are some of the fields that analysts complete in the editor. And as you can see, we track minimum lot size, setbacks, height, and parking requirements, and that's just to name a few. So currently, we have almost 2,500 jurisdictions in progress. We've completed just under 4,500 jurisdictions that are now searchable on the Atlas, and we're happy to say that the Atlas is now complete for the entire state of Arizona. Over 300 individuals have contributed to the Atlas, reading and analyzing almost 400,000 pages of zoning code text. In all, published jurisdictions so far cover land home to more than 87 million Americans. Highlighted in pink is the Phoenix Metropolitan Statistical Area, and now Dejan will walk us through how to use the public map.
Thanks, Ashley. And now I'm going to briefly show you how to use the interactive atlas on a website. If you want to use the atlas yourselves, you can access it through this QR code or zoningatlas.org/atlas. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. So you don't have access to screen sharing capabilities yet. Oh, no, I don't. Great. So when you first open the atlas, you'll see a nationwide view of our progress so far. The areas in purple have zoning, the areas in gray do not have zoning, and there are other layers such as water, tribal lands, and protected lands that are turned on by default. And I'll talk about those in a moment. You can zoom to a specific area or address by using the search bar on the right side. I'll go ahead and zoom into Phoenix metro area. Referencing the legend on the left side, the top left side of the page, you can see the zoning district types that we've uploaded. Districts that are light purple are primarily residential. Districts that are dark purple are mixed with residential. The beige areas are non-residential and no zoning areas are gray. You can also change the base map. For other features, you can toggle on water, tribal lands, and protected lands. An important note about our geospatial methodology is that we do have a file for each of those features, which we remove from the data we collect from the jurisdictions. We also remove right-of-ways based on the data we get from a jurisdiction, which is helpful for showing the area that can actually be developed. That way, the data is more standardized and we can more accurately compare across jurisdictions. You can see a brief overview of the zoning of any area by hovering over it, but you can also select a specific jurisdiction to get more information. Or you can find your jurisdiction of interest by searching in Zoom 2 on the bottom left side of the monitor. So I'll go ahead and look for Phoenix, Maricopa County. And while we're in this section, we also have the show me where people can build drop down. And this is very useful for showing where you can build a specific type of housing as of right. If I turn on the single family homes, for example, option on, the map updates to show only areas where you can build a single family home as of right. Referencing the results tab on the bottom right, you can see that you can build a single family home across 76% of the zone land Phoenix as of right. And notice that the entire map updates with the filter, but the results tab only shows a percentage for the selected jurisdiction. So if you turn this off and then turn it back on again, the map updates and we still have the 76% coverage for the jurisdiction. You can also zoom out to explore the region and click on any neighboring jurisdiction to select it and view its filter results. I'll click on Scottsdale, for example. Hit select. Hit select over here. And you can see that the percentage where you can build single family housing has updated to 70% of zone acres. Let's go back to Phoenix. If I change the filter to apartments with 4 or more units, the map updates again to reflect the filter. You can see that you can only build a 4+ family apartment in 20% of Phoenix as of right. If you want to find out about one of the districts that appears on the map, there are one of 2 ways you can do so. You can select the district by clicking on it, and that activates a pop-up. So this one pop-up for R3 that allows you to zoom to the extent of the district or see more details about that district. The other way is to scroll through the bottom of the zoning district card. So we had R3, this sorted alphabetically, this is selected. And that also showed more details about the zoning district. Things like minimum lot size, parking, sewer and water, transit, ADUs, and more. You can also filter for the additional details in the advanced filter section, which has expanded filtering criteria. For example, if I wanted to see where ADUs are allowed and subject to occupancy restrictions in Phoenix, actually, let me deselect that. ADUs are allowed, occupancy restrictions. You can see that the results show that 75% of the zone land in Phoenix allows for this. And I'll leave the rest of the filters for you all to use on your own. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to discuss our data across Metro Phoenix in more depth.
Thanks, Dejan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Kunkel, a zoning analyst with the NZA, and now we'll talk about some of the zoning statistics across the Phoenix area. We reviewed the zoning text for all 35 of the jurisdictions that comprise the full Phoenix metro area. Keep in mind that all of our nationwide analyses are snapshots of the zoning regulations at the point in time in which they were completed, but Phoenix was just compiled in the spring and summer of 2024, so this is very current information. Additionally, we are working on getting funding for ongoing maintenance of the atlas with the goal of completing annual updates. And just as a preface, our analysis does not evaluate land use regulations outside of the zoning code or consider any pending or recently passed state legislation which has yet to take effect. Future updates could include any statewide regulations that override local zoning laws. Now, the Atlas does also allow for customized logging of special cases. For example, we added a special field for Connecticut after they adopted statewide reforms around accessory dwelling units. The Atlas is simple to update in the event of entry errors or major legislative changes. To give you an idea of the complexity of the Phoenix metro area analysis, we read over 8,500 pages of zoning ordinances, which averaged 244 pages of text per jurisdiction. Of course, some of these were smaller with just 43 pages in Guadalupe, and some were larger with over 1,100 pages in Phoenix, which is one of the larger zoning ordinances we've come across nationwide. There are 794 districts that we've mapped in the metro area with an average of 23 districts per jurisdiction. As you can imagine, this work takes a lot of human brain power. We read the codes, applied the methodology, and simplified zoning requirements to extract the key data points to make these cross-jurisdictional comparisons. The following slides contain examples of insights we generated with the data we collected. The methodology is what allows us to make these apples to apples comparisons at the regional, state, and national level. So the Phoenix area is mostly comprised of protected land, which comes in many forms, including national forests, Bureau of Land Management property, and natural preserves or parks, that data for which we receive from the USGS's Protected Areas database. And then about a quarter of the metro area is zoned land, while 2% is unzoned. The remaining 11% is tribal land. Of the 25% of the total metro area that has zoning, 93% allows some type of residential development. About half of the zoned land allows primarily residential uses, and another 41% allows residential within a mixed use type of development. A small percentage of land is categorized as non-residential or areas where principal residential uses are prohibited. And this slide shows a further breakdown of the non-residential land use in the metro area. A little over half is industrial, while about a third is commercial. 8% is a mixture of non-residential uses, and then the remainder is a very small percentage of civic land uses or open space. This graphic shows the breakdown of 1 family, 2 family, 3 family, and 4 or greater family residential allowed by area across the 93% of zoned land categorized as primarily residential or mixed use. I want to clarify that this is a measure of the number of units allowed per lot in each district. Our methodology aims to simplify and standardize data across jurisdictions. So when we say 1 family, it indicates a maximum of 1 unit per lot, with the exception of ADUs, which we categorize separately. 2 family means a maximum of 2 units per lot, and so on. As you can see, all lands within the metro area that we categorize as primarily residential or mixed use allow 1 family residential by right or with a public hearing. About 30% of the land allows 2 or more family. However, most require a public hearing. This chart shows the percent of land area by jurisdiction upon which only single-family uses are permitted. The range is very wide, with nearly 100% of Paradise Valley's land area allowing only single-family homes, down to cities like Phoenix and El Mirage being under 25%. This chart also illustrates how easy it is to build single-family homes. The solid blue portion of the bar indicates the by right ability to build the single-family homes, while the crosshatch portion, there's just a little bit of that you can see on some of these bars, indicates that a public hearing is required. So as you can tell, it's a lot easier to build single-family homes. This chart is similar to the last, except that it shows by by jurisdiction, where the most percent of land area allows 4 or more units of housing. So essentially, these are multifamily developments. Here, the chart is arranged from the top with the most permissive by right use of multifamily, which is that solid colored gray portion of the bar. And the crosshatch portion indicates that the multifamily housing requires a public hearing. At the top of the chart, and likely because of their small size, are Youngtown and Guadalupe. Next on the list are Phoenix and Tempe, which you might expect as being the core cities of the metropolitan area. This chart also illustrates the difficulty in obtaining permission to build multifamily housing, given the overwhelming requirement for a public hearing in most of these situations. We categorize accessory dwelling units separately and found that most land zoned to allow one-family housing, about 58% of it, allows accessory dwelling units. This data point's important because ADUs are a way to add gentle density and could be identified as a type of low-hanging fruit for policy reform in areas with a predominance of single-family zoning. We also collect data on minimum lot size requirements. We convert all of these requirements to acreage. As you can see, almost all land in the metro area that allows one-family dwellings has some minimum lot size requirement. In fact, 73% of that land requires lot sizes that are greater than 1 acre. Similar to ADUs, decreasing lot size requirements for one-family homes may be a way for policymakers to add density to one-family zones. And in addition to the basic information on use and dimensions, we also collect data on affordability requirements, age restrictions, planned residential developments, and parking minimums. These special provisions allow jurisdictions to encourage or disincentivize certain types of development. We collect this data so map users can evaluate if there are policy changes they may want to implement as a means to encourage housing development. For example, reduced parking requirements. We've prepared a nice one-page snapshot of our findings for Phoenix, and this is available online at zoningatlas.org/snapshots or at the QR code link shown here. And we also have the snapshots of our other completed metro areas available online as well. And please interact with us. You can use the Atlas now online at zoningatlas.org/atlas. And once you start exploring, certainly share what you discover. You'll find us on X and Instagram at Zoning Atlas. We're also on LinkedIn, and you can email us anytime at info@zoningatlas.org. And now it's time for some questions, so we'll send it back to Ashley for that.
Okay, thank you. So one question that comes to mind for analysts is, are there any surprising trends that you discovered when reading the zoning code or dealing with the GIS portion of the research? Do you want to, either of you can answer that first?
Sure. I was surprised to find that a good amount of the jurisdictions in the Phoenix metro area allow ADUs. So they seem to be on that trend or ahead of that trend already. And several of the cities have form-based codes, which are somewhat popular or growing in popularity. So we came across several form-based codes as well.
Thank
And
you.
I'll just, yeah. And I'll just say that this is the first state that I've worked on. I'm not an Arizona resident. I've never been to Arizona. So it was very nice to see how the diversity of residences and land uses could be replicated on an atlas like this. Like you'd see protected lands and tribal lands and college communities, suburban communities. It does seem to be a very diverse state. Also, on the geospatial side, there is a wide range of the kinds of data that we collect. So some data we find on ArcGIS servers, some data we have to get from the jurisdiction directly. They come in PDF sometimes, and sometimes the quality can also range. So I think another part of what we do is to call attention to the ways that we collect data and assess the data that we get.
Thank you. So, my first experience with the zoning atlas was Arizona as well. And one thing that I noticed, like Dejan, and mentioned, was the accessibility to the zoning text. It was quite difficult for a lot of the smaller towns. So when we would reach out to them, it might take a bit longer than anticipated. And in those cases, obviously, we tried to deduce what we could from the information provided online. But that confirmed the need for something like this to help it become more understandable for those around us. So Jeff lived in Arizona, and so we want to hear from Jeff. How does the zoning analysis compare with the actual built environment? If there's anything that you can mention.
Sure. I did live and work in the Phoenix metro area for several years, so it was nice to return there and do some work in the state. I think analyzing all of the city's zoning ordinances sort of confirmed what I might have thought or guessed about some cities. You know, Paradise Valley is known for its large lot single family zoning, and that was confirmed by our analysis, which showed that it basically allows for single family homes and not much else. Um, the large number of planned residential communities, master plan communities in cities on the fringes of the metro area, places like Buckeye, was confirmed in our analysis, and you can see that on our map now. And then, the growing mix of uses in all of the suburban cities that are sort of densifying their cores or creating their own downtowns shows up in the zoning. So places that didn't traditionally have a mixed use center now have the zoning that supports a downtown, places like Chandler or Gilbert or Avondale or Goodyear that have zoning in place to support the city centers they want to create.
Sorry, thank you. So thank you for answering that, Jeff. We have one question in the chat talking about staying up to date with the changing zoning codes. So the question is, how do you make sure the information provided is current?
Yeah, so we do an analysis of the zoning ordinances that are up to date at the time that we do this work. Of course, those can change as cities update their zoning ordinances, and as I mentioned, states may adopt laws that change from time to time. So ongoing work will have to be done to keep it updated, but the National Zoning Atlas aims to do this work on a yearly basis to keep it as updated as possible.
Thank you, Jeff. And then one last comment is this is very exciting. This year we passed a statewide ADU bill and a middle housing bill. So to your point, this may need to be updated in the future. So that speaks to what we just addressed. Thank you so much, Jake. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. And just look out for more from us in the future.